Hey everybody, I'm back at this live thing. I figured I'd make a video this evening about making some Christmas ornaments. It's getting to be that time of year, and Christmas ornaments are one of the first things I ever learned to make. So it's a really fun, fairly easy thing to make in glass, and people love them, and I love that people love them. Anyways, hi everybody, I see that you're watching. I am going to be archiving this video on YouTube, so I won't call out people's names, but thanks for watching. I am also happy to answer any questions as we go along. I'll be making two different ornaments today, two different styles of ornamentation on the ornaments. One is going to be called a wrap and rake technique, and if you've seen my previous videos, I demonstrated making a pipe with the wrap and rake technique, and it's very, very similar. So anyways, that's about like what the ornament is going to look like with the wrap and rake. Now this is blue-green tubing, and I'll be using the cobalt blue today. Also, I'll be doing another technique in which I apply a very thin layer of silver to the outside of the tubing, and then encase the silver with clear glass, and that'll create an effect very similar to this. So that's silver fuming over cobalt blue tubing with clear stripes on top, and it won't be this shape, it'll be more this shape, but it'll be fairly similar. So what I also wanted to do today is sometimes I do all my prep work in advance. I have done that before for the previous video, and that's fine, but I thought you guys might want to see just a very little bit of prep work. I'll make a what's called a stringer live today, which is a very thin piece of glass, usually a color, because the colored glass comes in rods that are roughly 7 millimeters in diameter, somewhere in there. You can get them bigger, but that's too big for our application. So what we have to do is draw it down, and when we draw the glass down into a thin diameter, it's called a stringer. And then the other thing that I have done prep work wise is I went ahead and put a little piece of silver, and get this to focus, a little piece of silver on the end of this rod, and that's fine silver, 0.999 pure silver. It comes off of a coin that I've had for a good long time. So that's already stuck on there, that's ready to go. And then I'll also be demonstrating what's called a point, and I've also demonstrated that in previous videos, but I figured, it might as well, go ahead and just do that really quick. It only takes about 2 minutes to do those two things. So, Oh, also, I meant to mention, in my previous video, I'd made a birthday cake, and I said that the birthday cake might break, which it did, and then, but it broke clean in half. So I was able to make myself a little birthday cake pendant out of it. So that's the back side. It's kind of cool, actually. You can see inside. You can see inside of the thing. Maybe I should take it off, but you can see inside of it. So it almost looks like a caramel cake. Anyways, so if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment, ask a question. If you could rate the video audio quality, and just let me know between 1 and 10, 10 being the best audio quality, what we're getting. At times this audio quality isn't the greatest. So anyways, first thing I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and make my stringer right now. So this is just a piece of, it's called Chinese opaque white, and it's a very, very dense color, and I'm repeating some of the things that I've said in previous videos, but it's okay. Maybe somebody's just tuning in for the first time today, so day after Thanksgiving, and I hope everybody had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I had a pretty good one. Thanksgiving's always weird. I usually don't eat a big meal that early in the day, so I got back home last night and I fell asleep at about 9:30 in my chair. So right now I'm just pulling that rod out. You see how it just comes out into a nice, smaller, even consistency diameter. I'm going to take it off the end of here. Then I'm going to go down to the bench and just nip it off. So yeah, if one of you guys could just comment and let me know how the audio quality is between 1 and 10, I'd appreciate that. Okay, so I've got a bunch of stringers that I already made up. I'm just going to set them to the other side of me because that's ultimately where I need them to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and audio is 10, sweet. Okay, that's cobalt tubing. And so it comes like this, and I've already pulled a point off of it, and I'll come down here, heat it up, and pull it again. So there'll be a section about like this with a handle on it, and what's left will look like this. So that's cobalt tubing, and I believe it's 35 millimeter. It's like 1.5 inches diameter with a fairly heavy wall. I think it's like 3.5 or 4 millimeters thick on that wall weight. So what I did just now is I'm just marking where I'm going to cut with my carbide knife, just make a little scratch in the glass. So I apologize if you guys, I go off camera sometimes. It's this is just a cell phone, so we're just kind of making do with what we got. I've got to go way up in the flame when I start out because there might be some water trapped in there. The air condenses, and the water vapor condenses out of the air, and you have to drive the water out of the tube before you get it super hot, because if you don't, it'll crack. So one of the previous videos I'd mentioned kind of the rules of glass and glass working, and that's just one of those things where you learn that rule over time, and you don't make hopefully don't make the same mistakes over and over and over again. So I'm just pulling this point down nice and easy, nice and slow. The cooler it gets, the harder I had to pull. And part of the trick to this is keeping everything on center. And there are ways that you can go back and fix a handle that's maybe a little bit cattywampus, but it's better if you can get it the first time on center. So, anyways. Alright, so that's what we're left with. That's called a point. Nice long handle on that point. I want to see that handle's probably 18 inches long. And I like to keep them nice and long for this application because I don't want to burn myself. And when I have the big flame going, if I'm too close to it, it actually kind of gives you like a sunburn, or like a very intense sunburn. So I'm going to go ahead and just preheat this tube. This tube is as cold as it is in the shop, and so I'm just using kind of an annealing flame here, which is just a high propane flame, very cool, relatively cool flame, and that'll allow the glass's temperature to kind of normalize and equalize and get it closer to a working temperature. So there again, it doesn't blow up in our faces. The way I deal with that usually is I'll do my prep work in advance, and I throw all my points in the kiln and then just work all those prepared points one at a time. And that kiln runs at 1050, 1100 degrees, so they're nice and hot, so I can just go right into the flame. But since I demonstrated this point, it was cold. Anyways, so yeah. So my next step is I'm going to wrap, and I know some of you guys have already seen the wrap and rake technique in a previous video that I did, or maybe you already know this. But you know, this is how I achieved the pattern that I showed you guys before. So, and for my ornaments, you know, usually for my pipes I'll do 8 wraps. And for my ornaments, I don't really count. I like to do a few more wraps if I can get them in there. You know, I think it kind of, it looks pretty cool if you can get a bunch of wraps in there with the ornaments. So anyways, I'm just laying this stringer down 1 wrap at a time. And yeah, you know, like it's kind of lumpy and chunky in places where the ends meet. Like there's ways, if you're really, you know, you can be really careful and kind of avoid that. I don't find that it affects the final product that much, and this is a demonstration piece, and you know, I'm not too worried about it. Let's see. Okay, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I got 8 on that one. I think we're gonna call 8 good for that one. Okay, so now the blank is wrapped. I'm gonna rake it, and what I'm gonna rake it with is a piece of clear rod. And this is just a piece of 3mm clear rod. It's the same type of rod that I'll be using to encase the silver on the next ornament. So, the other thing that you learn kind of as you go along is how to change your flame characteristics and your flame chemistries as well. And a little later on we'll get to some of the flame chemistry talk, but the characteristics are almost just as important as your chemistry. So with this flame, I want the hip to be narrow. I want to heat up a specific part of that blank so I can then wrap it or rake it down. But I don't want to heat up, you know, a quarter of it at a time, because then it's just going to get unmanageable. So I'm going to heat up a specific part of the blank, which means I'm going to need the flame characteristic to be tight. The other thing about a wrap and rake is that the flame needs to be hot enough that it melts the line, the wrap that's one ahead of the flame at least. And the way you draw down on it to rake needs to be in such a fashion that it's slow enough that the glass that you're trying to rake through is warm enough so that you're not forcing anything. And the converse can be true too. You can get the glass too hot, and if you do that, you start gouging into your blanks. So you know, there's a lot of nuances that you know, kind of to the untrained eye. And certainly to my eye, before I ever started blowing glass, I didn't really catch on to until I was actually trying it, and I thought to myself, oh man, this is a whole lot harder than I ever thought it would be. You know, my buddy did this, and he does it all the time, and it looks really easy. It looks really simple. And once you get it, yeah, it's pretty simple. You've got the technique down. But I assumed that, you know, since I had watched somebody for a long time, that, you know, oh, I can just do that, you know, and I had never been given that lesson of, okay, there's this nuance that's going on here that, you know, he didn't tell me about, or, you know, that I didn't catch on to, you know, when I was actually watching. So you can see on the cool side, that's what the wrapped and raked blank looks like. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to grab the glass from this side, and I'm going to clean all this up. You can kind of see those little spots of clear that aren't melted in. I'm going to clean it all up and make this domed piece, this hip, more uniform in its wall thickness and its wall weight. Then I'm going to heat up pretty much the entire thing, blow it out into a bulb, pop a hole, ultimately, which will become the top, attach a blow tube to it, turn it around, and finish shaping it, throw it in the kiln, and we'll call that good. So, anyways, see, everybody's watching. Hey guys, I said a little bit earlier that I'm archiving these things. Oh, that's my silver. I'm archiving these things on YouTube, so I don't want to call out people's names, but hey everybody. So yeah, so Christmas is directly ahead. It's coming up real quick, y'all. You gotta think about, you know, what I'm getting folks for Christmas. One of the nice things about being a glass blower is I can usually make most all of my presents for people, and that's kind of nice. I said earlier that this was one of the first things I learned how to make, and what's great about a Christmas ornament is if they're not very clean, or if they don't work out too well, you can always just give them to people, you know. And if you give it away, people are like, oh, this is awesome, you know. But if you tell them it's $20 and it's all janky, then you're like, I don't know. So anyway, so I'm coming way out in my flame. I want a pretty nice brushy flame for this. This is referred to as hollow work, and in hollow work, you're real concerned about heating everything very evenly. You want even, nice heat. You want that heat to wrap around. I've got one source of flame, but I want that flame to wrap around my blade. So nice and even heating. And when I pull this out of the fire, I'm going to wait for a minute before I blow it in there, because I also want the heat to just kind of equalize. So I can see now. You guys feel free to share this video, you know. I set the security setting as public, so you know, anybody that cares to watch, whether they're a friend of mine or not, you know, I'm more than happy to share this with people. So actually, I love to share. So that's kind of where we're at. It looks kind of like a hot air balloon at this point. And I'm going to pop a hole dead in the middle down here. Again, we're talking about flame characteristics. I want a very small, thin, shouldered flame to be able to push that hole right to the middle. And I don't know if you guys could see it, but I was watching my flame deflect. I can see the flame color change when I put the, you know, I can't see on the end of it, but I can see the color change when the piece is actually in the flame, and I can see the flame deflect. And you know, that way I know I'm just putting the very edge of it in, the very tip of it in, so I can make sure I have a nice centered hole. You see how well centered that hole is? I mean, it's pretty much dead on center. And that's very important, you know, technique-wise. You know, just to be able to make the ornament, it's very important to have that hole right on the center. Half the battle in lamp working, I feel like, is just keeping everything on center. There's this gentleman named Roger Paramore, and he's a well-known glass blower, nice guy, and people call him the human lathe, and he can keep things on center and make something so thin-walled. It'll be a vase that's 20 inches tall, perfectly thin wall, perfect taper, and I mean, everything's perfectly on center, and that takes years to perfect, and it takes a lot of knowledge too, you know. So goblet makers. I can think of some goblet makers. As a matter of fact, I kind of want to give a shout out to Lance up at Flame Tree. You know, that if you guys are interested in taking a kind of a good, if you're local to the Atlanta area and you want to take a solid kind of beginner type class, you guys should check out Flame Tree Glass, and they're in historic Roswell. They have a beautiful studio up there. Lance and Maureen are both very nice people, and you can take one of their beginner classes for like 50 or 60 bucks, which is super cheap, and you're pretty much guaranteed to come out of there having made something that, you know, like if you go and take their Christmas ornament class, you know, you'll come out of there with at least one Christmas ornament that, you know, has held together. And so that's a great resource that we have here. Anyways, okay, so I just want to melt the rest of this in a little bit. I'll melt it in and just kind of even out that wall a little bit. Make sure it's a shape I like. Right now what I'm doing is more shaping and just kind of making sure everything is well melted in. And, you know, the wall weight's fairly even, etc., etc. So I could leave it round. If I wanted to, I could pull it down into a nice taper, kind of like make a conical shape. I kind of like that. I like them round. I think it looks pretty good. Good enough for government work anyways. And so at the end of the whole process, I'll just throw a little cap on there. Some people like to, at this point, make a little glass loop and take it off the blow tube and just kind of, you know, avoid having to buy these things. I like these things. I think they're great, so I use them. I think they actually make the ornament look a little more professional, etc., etc. You know, it's like what people expect to see in an ornament. So anyways, so that guy's pretty much done. At the end of the night, I'll take him off the blow tube and then he'll be done. So I just went back in my kiln and I got a fresh blank. This one I'm going to do with silver fume. So I showed you guys a minute ago that piece of silver I have on that clear rod. And what I'm doing right now is I'm adjusting my flame chemistry to what's called a reducing flame. And a reducing flame has more propane in it than it does oxygen. And that's the type of flame that you need to be able to vaporize the fine silver that's on the end of this rod and ultimately have it stick to this glass. And this glass needs to be within a range of temperatures that'll allow the silver to stick. Not too hot and not cold either. It won't, silver won't stick to cold glass. So, and there's a bunch of chemistry and just kind of interesting factoids out there about how and why fuming works, and I honestly couldn't tell you too much about the technical side of it. I just know that it works, and this is how to make silver stick to things, and et cetera, et cetera. I think my blank's a little bit too hot. But you see that silver starting to stick on there. Yeah, that's better. That's a little better. Okay. We're going to call that good for government work, and I'm going to stripe it again. I'll stripe it with the clear rod, and I'm going to try to focus my flame on the clear rod itself as I stripe, not so much on the blank, because I want to preserve the silver. That's the whole point of striping it, is I'm trying to preserve the silver that I just put on there. So. And you know, if you think about it, you can do a lot of different things with this, just this very simple technique. You could vary the length or the how close together you put your stripes. You could vary the thickness of the stripes. You know, you might use, 5mm alternating with 3mm. You could use a different color even. You can do a lot of different things with just some very simple techniques in glass. And one of the greatest parts about what I do is that I really feel like, my options are really only limited by my imagination, and also my technical ability. So, it's not the glass's fault if I make the same thing over and over again and I don't want to be doing it. That's my fault. So part of kind of the joy in glass making for me has been this kind of constant challenge and evolution, and that's the joy and the pain. It's a constant, just a constant effort is required on my part to really, try to grow as an artist, try to learn a different technique. All of those things, they all come into play. And I think that's one of the reasons it's so important to have teachers, because they allow me to kind of explore this world by showing me some kind of technical things a lot of the times. Okay, so that's where we are. So that's the blank. And again, process will be much the same as last time. I'll spin up this part right here so it'll turn into a little spiral. I'll come down a little bit further on the blank, and that'll become a spiral. And then this at the bottom will become a spiral. So. Yeah, one of the things that I want to do is get some more cameras in here and figure a way to switch the angles, have angles simultaneously so that you guys can see better what's going on in the flame, and also get some lens filters for cameras that'll allow people to see what all's going on in the flame while I'm manipulating the glass. I know you can't see anything but orange when I go into the flame. So if we can get this to cool down just a little bit, you'll see that spiral in there. I like spirals. Spirals are pretty simple to make and they look cool. Alright. want to make sure that all of those clear lines are well melted in. Okay, you guys can kind of see where we're at again, and I'll repeat the process again. So small flame, I'll watch for that shoulder of the flame to start deflecting so I can gauge if I'm really far in or if I'm just at the right spot. And now you can see how that one's a little bit cattywampus, but I can fix that with my reamer. But it's more or less dead in the middle. Turned out pretty. I like silver fume on cobalt. I like the kind of the gradient effect of the different blues. Silver fume will give you blues, purples, and yellows, and sometimes even browns. It just depends on how much silver you apply to the blank, if there's a base color underneath it. Yeah, so. There again, I just welded up a blow tube to the other end, the end that I just popped a hole in. That's where we're at. Now notice where I've melted. I melted down here, and the reason that I did that is because up here, see how all of these lines aren't melted in yet, how they've got little nubbles on them? That's very stressed, and it's also cold. So I want to give myself the opportunity to heat and to get some heat base back into this end of the blank before I go into the flame. Because if I went right into the flame right here, it would crack almost every time. Sometimes you might get away with that. The point is the technique is important. You know, those nuances, the rules of the glass. You know, there's a rule to the glass. If you respect the glass will treat you kindly. So now, what's great about that knowledge is that every time I can replicate this exactly every time. So I get to actually make it happen, right? That's the whole point, right? We're actually going to make something here. I mean, it's all fun and good to just play around and, oh, well, if it cracks, but, you know, at the end of the day, you kind of want to have something that survived. And let me tell you, if any of you guys are thinking about going into glass or just getting started with glass, you're going to have about 5 or 6 months of just sitting there and breaking things all day long. But eventually, once you make that mistake for the 150th time, you're going to think, oh, maybe I should try something different. You can't rush it. You know, it took me a little extra time to make sure that I didn't break this, but it takes less time to make sure that I don't break it than if I break the whole thing and have to start all over again. there you have it, ladies and gents. Another one for the Christmas tree. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. Really appreciate it. If you are interested in buying an ornament, that's great. You know, it helps me pay my bills. Just send me a direct message. If you're seeing this on YouTube, just send me a direct message, that's fine. If you're seeing this on Facebook, same thing. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I appreciate it.